Thank you all for coming. Welcome to Native Sessions, Native Instruments' ongoing and evolving series of events for the music community. It's an amazing turnout tonight. It's a ton of people out there, so thank you all for coming down. Native Sessions takes place on a regular basis in London, LA, New York, Tokyo, and Berlin, where we are tonight. Thanks to our friends and sponsors from Electronic Beats for making this possible. Welcome to everybody who's watching live on the web right now. We're streaming live from Prince Charles in Berlin. At several points tonight, we're going to be opening up for questions from the chat and also from the audience. So if you're out there on the internet and you want to ask a question, feel free to submit your questions to the chat, and we will try to answer them. I'm Philip Sherburne. I'm a contributing editor at Pitchfork. I used to write for Resident Advisor, The Wire, Spin, and a bunch of other places. I'm based in Barcelona nowadays, but I used to live in Berlin, so it's really, really nice to be back here. Tonight, we're going to be talking about sonic hooks. We have a mix of theory and practice. We've got Boris, aka Comfort Fit. He's the Machina lead product specialist. He's going to be showing us some tips and tricks for creating your own sonic hooks. We have a track deconstruction from Kabuki, a bass music producer from Combination and V Records. Nadine, aka Nevin, the lead product specialist for Complete, is going to be showing us more tips and tricks. And finally, Low-Tick, Fatima Al-Qadiri, and wife are going to be sitting down with me for a panel roundtable discussion. So first of all, let's talk about sonic hooks. And why isn't my presentation? There we go. What is a sonic hook? Is it a melody? Is it a bass line? Is it a riff? Is it a rhythm? Is it a sound effect? We're going to find out. Well, most of you probably make electronic music. We're going to be talking about the intersection of electronic music and pop, specifically how hooks have colonized pop music. And by way of getting started, I wanted to play you a song tonight that you probably were not expecting to hear today. This is the 30th anniversary of this song. The band New Shoes is from my hometown, Portland, Oregon. They're a one-hit wonder, but their story is still pretty incredible. The song originally came out on a self-released EP in 1985. It kind of went nowhere. A critic in the local paper wrote it up and said that it was a shame that the song would never get played on the radio. Local radio DJs read that review out loud on the radio, and the band's manager happened to be listening to the radio. So he rode down to the station on his Vespa, and he handed them a record, and they played it on the radio, and the song became a local hit. I mean, it's one of those, like, local kids make good stories. The song became a local hit. It didn't get them any further until the song wound up getting licensed to a Dutch dance music label. And a Dutch DJ, Peter Slaghuis, remixed the song, and that's the version that ended up going to number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100. And I'll play you a snippet of that now. It's a pretty sweet video. You know it's 1985 because there's a dog in sunglasses. You might notice there's something different in this version. There's a lot of stuff different, but there's one really important thing. It's the hook. It's that ZTT-like vocal sample, the kind of the choral pad, also very, very 1985. And it's not a huge difference, but it's enough that it turned the song into a hit. It got them signed to a multi-record deal. They never really went anywhere after that, but that song took off like wildfire. The band say that they have a litmus test for fans, that if someone comes up to them and sings the bass line, they know they're like a real dedicated fan of the band. If they sing the hook, they're kind of basic. Still, the hook is what made the song. They describe it as the barking seal, and that reminds me of another sea mammal, the dolphin. Now, you might recall hearing about another so-called dolphin in pop music not too long ago.
I was by your side, so where are you now that I need you? Where are you now that I need you?
Now, I'm guessing you know this song, and whether you love it or you hate it, it's certainly kind of a big deal. It's had close to 500 million YouTube views at this point. It was a top 10 song in the US, the UK, Canada, Denmark, Finland, the Netherlands. It went double platinum in the United States, and it just won the Grammy for Best Dance Recording. Now, it was Skrillex that called that little hook up in the high end the dolphin sound. Diplo refers to it as a flute. This, if you didn't know, that's Skrillex, Diplo, and Justin Bieber. The sound, the dolphin, is actually just a snippet of Justin Bieber's voice, which has been pitched up, distorted, bounced, resampled. As far as production goes, it's not really rocket science, but it's what makes the song, and it's what people have latched onto, and ever since they described it as the dolphin, you hear people talking about the song with the dolphin, which is kind of crazy. I don't know how many of you saw the Grammys last week or 2 weeks ago, but Skrillex, Diplo, and Bieber performed that song, but they did it as a rock song, as like a modern rock rendition with Skrillex on guitar, Diplo on toms and mellotron, and then they had a drummer and strings and keyboards. But what was really interesting is that in spite of all of that, they still ended up playing the dolphin sample over the top of it. And what that says to me is that the song just wouldn't have held up without the dolphin, that it was the hook that made the song, and without that, it was just any kind of modern rock song. I wanted to play a clip from the performance, but it has disappeared from YouTube, which might tell you something about how well the song holds up as modern rock. So what do we mean when we talk about sonic hooks? In part, it's sound design, shaping or sculpting sound. Sound design has always been an essential part of electronic music, and not just electronic music, really all recorded music. Think of Elvis Presley's Blue Moon or the Beatles' Revolver. I mean, it's the sound of the studio, it's the sound of the electronic treatments. But especially in electronic music, I mean, sound design is everything. If you listen to Jeff Mills' The Bells, and then you listen to a symphonic version of it, you realize that very little of the original actually survives in translation. In electronic music, the specifics of timbre and texture are everything. I remember a few years ago, I was doing an Invisible Jukebox interview with Carl Craig for The Wire. That's where you sit down with a musician and you play them songs without telling them what they are, and you see if they can identify what it is, and then they tell you a little story. And I wanted to play him a classic Detroit track, but this one particular track, but since I knew that the vocals would give the song away, I used the instrumental version. And this is how far I got in the song. And he looked up and said, Charivari. Now, a hand clap itself isn't a hook. I mean, the hook in this song is the synth arpeggio, which we'll hear in a second. But it's the specificity of that hand clap, which I think is probably a hand clap and a hi-hat and a little bit of reverb, is what makes one of the things that makes the song what it is. It's what let me play one sound, and Carl Craig could say, that's Charivari. So let's listen to a tiny bit of the song, because Charivari also has a really killer hook.
Bread and cheese and fine white wine. Designer shit about a matter of time. Could this be the real thing? Or is this just another fling?
Timeless song. I don't know how they made it. I'm guessing that it's played live and not sequenced, because the hook, the arpeggio is really out of time. It rushes the beat a lot. But what I'm interested in getting across is that the hook is more than just the specific sound of a synthesizer patch or a drum hit, and it's more than just a melody or a riff. I think we're talking about a combination of things. We're talking about a combination of melody or frequency, of rhythm, and of timbre. And those three things combine to create a unique phrase without which the song would not be the same. The difficult thing in preparing this presentation was not just defining what a hook is, but in kind of figuring out which ones to pull out, because once you start looking for hooks, you realize that they're everywhere. The more you listen for them, the more you find them. But I wanted to go back, not to the beginning, but close to the beginning. And I've pulled a great historical example from 1963, relatively early in the history of electronic music. And this is the theme from Doctor Who by Delia Derbyshire and the BBC Radiophonic Workshop. We're going to listen to it a bit. What makes that hook, or actually a combination of hooks, because you have the bass, then you have the top line as well, what makes it special? It's not just the melody of it, it's, to me anyway, it's the dynamism, it's the idiosyncrasies that it has, the portamento swoops in the beginning, the curious sense of swing in the bass line, and all of that is a direct result of how it was made. And we're going to watch a couple minutes of a BBC documentary about the making of the Doctor Who theme.
I saw the graphics at the same time that Ron Grainer did. And then I was given his score.
So Ron actually wrote the tune on a piece of paper, a single piece of paper, and then left us to it.
When I saw Ron Grainer's score, there were some swoops indicated, and I assumed those were sine waves.
The bass line that everybody thinks they know are actually made in two tracks within themselves.
I think he may have described as guitar plus a, I don't know, something like a bass bassoon or something.
We did a whole string of me, which when we played with the dun-da-dun, dun-da-dun, I can't sing it, but they went together as a pair.
But then, apart from that, to fit in with the graphics, he used words like clouds and wind bubble.
But it's that sort of detail that people who create a Doctor Who signature tune by ear don't know that that's how it was done, or how Ron actually scored it, because the score has never left the building as far as I know. Don't ask me where it is, it's somewhere.
Clouds, obviously, one thinks of as filtered white noise, and wind bubble, I think we used a wobulator.
Delia and I got to work using sound generating equipment. There are no musicians, there are no synthesizers, and in those days we didn't even have a 2-track or a stereo tape machine. It was always mono.
It was constructed on literally on quarter-inch mono tape, inch by inch by inch.
And literally we built up the orchestra with individual notes, and Delia would say, I think we need about 64 B flats and 25 E's and B's and things like that, and we cut them all out physically.
What I'd like to say is that hardly anything of it was done in real time. It was done either at half speed or chopped together in little bits of tape. For example, the swoops at the beginning, that they were done on the old valve oscillators.
Now, most tunes have got a 3-part structure. You've got a rhythm, you've got a melody, and you've got the sort of twiddly bits on top. So we created 3 separate tapes, put them onto 3 machines, and stood next to them and said, "Ready, steady, go," and pushed all the start buttons at once. It seemed to work. In those days, it was obvious if there was a wrong note, how to find out. You simply unrolled all the tape down the floor, walked along the sticky tape joins, and where two sticky tape joins weren't next to each other, that was the wrong note. So that was that. And we played it to Ron, yes, lovely, and it became the theme that we grew to love.
What I love about that video is you see the detail, the process of composing the hook, the fact that there were no synthesizers as conventionally understood, there were no keyboards, there was no performance. It was all done note by note. And to me, one of the takeaways is that unconventional techniques, even though I guess, well, no, that was pretty unconventional even then, unconventional techniques lead to more unusual hooks. They lead to things that you can't get by other means. Dick Mills was the other guy there, and he said that most tunes have got a three-part structure: the rhythm, the melody, and some twiddly bits. And I think that the best sonic hooks tend to combine those three elements into one kind of signature. So having laid all that out, I wanted to run through some examples, most of which you'll probably recognize mostly from dance music, electronic music. You'll all know this one. Wow. And on the one hand, it seems like super simple. I mean, I think it succeeds in part because it seems so simple. But the more you listen to it, the more complex it really becomes. I mean, you have the difference between the hard staccato attacks and then the really soft attack, which I don't know if it's I don't know if it was done by like reversing something or if it's just like using ADSR. Certain notes seem to sort of speed up. I mean, it's really, really dynamic and nuanced. As a side note, you can also tell how successful that has been because it's been recreated as a sample pack and it's been copied numerous times and across EDM. So yeah, it's super easy to spot too. I find it kind of shocking that so many people copy it because as soon as you hear that wah, you know exactly what you're listening to. Here's another one that's seemingly very simple, and I'm not going to play the whole thing for you because you know how it goes, but. I keep waiting to see when I'm ready to hear that out again. I don't know if that's ever going to happen again in my life, but that's another one that seems super simple on the surface, but when you listen a little more closely, I mean, there's the portamento swoops in there, there's that detuned second oscillator, and it's just, you know, that's the hook that makes the sound, that makes the song, and that also went on to be really influential. That kind of that helped spark the whole so-called dirty Dutch sound, been widely copied again across EDM. Now we're going to go back to New York, and we're going to listen to a little bit of a Masters at Work song, the Ha Dance. This is from 1991. It's gone on to become a huge song in ballroom culture, especially the Ha crash. But I'm actually interested in listening to the vocal hook here, and we're going to listen to this, and then we're going to listen to the source that it comes from. There's the crash. one of the things that's so amazing about that particular hook is where it comes from. It comes from the film Trading Places with Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy. It's kind of hard to believe that this film got, I mean, you couldn't make it now with good reason because you got Dan Aykroyd in blackface. But there you go. And so this is the scene that it comes from.
Nenge Yomboko from Cameroon. Do you remember me? It's Lionel Joseph.
Lionel! From the African Education Conference, right?
Yes, Simon. I was director of cultural events at the Haile Selassie Pavilion.
I remember the pavilion. We had big fun there.
And what blows my mind is how they could take that, take it completely out of context and turn it into something, something that it's completely new. I mean, and something that went on to kind of seed dance culture in such an interesting way. This is another mix, or another portion of that track, and we're going to listen to it. And what I want you to hear is how it's the second iteration of the hook. I have no idea how they did it. I'm not an expert enough. I don't know if it's a filtered and EQ'd vocal. I don't know if it's a synthesizer. But they're basically taking the hook and they're kind of twisting it and stretching it into this new thing. So here's a record by our friend Lotic, who's going to be speaking with us later on. And not to put him on the spot here, but what I'm really interested in is how he has taken the most abstract part of the hot dance hook, the part that we just listened to, and he's stretched it even further. And later in the roundtable, I want to ask him how he did that, and I also want to ask him about his motivations for it, because we've spoken about it a little bit before, and he had interesting things to say. So let's listen to a little bit. What I'm really interested in how is he's taken that hook and he's stretched and abstracted it even further. We're going to go to Berlin to Fidel and Aerosmith and MMM. They're all masters of these insanely simple hooks. This is one of my favorites. This one is from Fidel. It sounds like a mosquito kind of buzzing and nagging in your ear. It's the same kind of stretched vocal, sort of plasticized sound. Since we're running over a little bit, I'm going to skip over the MMM one, but it's also amazing. MMM is by Eric Aerosmith, who does the Razor synthesizer for, well, let's listen to it. He does the Razor synth for Native. And again, it's super simple, but man, it's raving. I think you can compare this to Flat Beat. It's the same mixture of kind of portamento swoops, the soft and the hard attack, and you get little variations on the main theme all the way along. And that tea kettle in the background. running out of time, so I'm going to have to skip over a few here. I wanted to quickly play you one by Sophie. I'm sure you all know this. This is Lemonade. And this is again where we see where things are getting really abstracted. Kind of the divide between rhythm and melody and texture is all twisted up together.
Lemonade, lemonade. 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 Lemonade, lemonade.
Sorry to leave you hanging there. So we're going to finish this up with a One O Tricks Point Never hook. This is a super interesting one. It uses the syncopations remind me of like hardcore punk. He's using kind of a plucked sound with a delay. It's super complex. I'm reading this book right now by Ben Ratliff. He's one of the music critics at the New York Times. It's called Every Song Ever, and he has a chapter about repetition. And he said, he's talking about the difference between repetition and variation. And he said something that I thought was really applicable to that song and hooks in general. And he said, the best of what we call repetition in music, heard closely, is really the opposite of repetition. Subtle differences, slowly shifting backgrounds, a change moving against a constant.